Welcome back to Mantle Mondays. My name is Amar Varma, the co-founder and CEO of Mantle. Today I'm joined by an extraordinary guest, Chris Canavan, who is the founder of Canavan Private Wealth, where he bridges gaps between his institutional background and his current focus on the human side of wealth for founders and entrepreneurs. Chris, welcome to the program. It's great to have you. And before I throw to you, I've always admired two characters in film. One is the accountant from Entourage, great character, and the X-Man from Pulp Fiction, and I feel like those might be relevant for the introduction here.
Well, that's great. That just tells you exactly who I am then. So this is going to go really well.
Well, welcome. Excited to have you on, and we'll get you to dive into who you are, what you're all about here shortly. Um, maybe for those tuning in, maybe sharing what is it you do and why is it you exist and why we can get into how important it is, but maybe start there.
I mean, it's a long, boring story if you ask my kids, but I've been in this industry for quite a while now, experienced a couple of different things. And now I felt a part of my career at this point. I just work for a select few post exit founders as their general manager. So I'm kind of that number two for them. I am the one who just makes sure that that sounding board and helps with the execution of everything relevant to what is important to them.
Amazing, and that's for clarity, that's obviously financial. We'll get into that, but that's life too, right? There's
Oh
other
yeah.
to it, and we'll get into some of the key pieces there. But you know, um, you have this really great construct around, I guess what's they call the Soros mindset. Um, you've talked about, you've spent time at the highest levels in global finance at global in institutions. It's mathematical certainty, right? As founders, we're generally addicted to risk on, because we don't think any bullet can take us down. Um, I want to extract some of the institutional discipline that you bring, because I think it's really important to layer that into people's mindset early and often. And maybe I'll start with how founders shift from building a product to managing a legacy without kind of losing it in the fire.
Yeah. I mean, I think the idea is really understanding what got you to where you are and being able to adapt that mindset to the different areas, right? So, I mean, I kind of look at, um, I'm going to use a lot of analogies because it's just the way I explain things. But if you think of a Formula One driver, right? So the way they are on the track, what gets them their success is that aggressive nature and how they're driving. And obviously, they can't drive that way when they get into public. So a lot of times, there is this real mental shift of going from the race car and then getting into their daily driver and how they're going to navigate daily traffic and how they're going to go about things. They're not going to take a hairpin turn the same way in Monday morning traffic as they would on a racetrack. So the idea is like the Soros mindset is really looking at things almost in a worst case scenario, right? You always want to be working around risk, right? So assuming you're going to learn lessons and um, everybody stumbles, everybody learns from the mistakes, but we got to make sure we don't take big bets. And that's kind of really where you're kind of readjusting yourself.
I think it's a great analogy. I think people think uh founders are all like risk takers, and they do it like wild cowboys, right? And I think what you're getting at is it's actually the opposite. It's very calculated risk on micro decisions that over time build up into a what looks risky, and then there's times where it's like we just got to do this thing and it feels risky to others, right? And they're like, no, we just got to do this thing, right? And I think it's really important to encapsulate that.
Well, I mean, I
um
think the thing is that, like I always like to say, risk is only risky to those who don't know what they're doing, right? But the idea is being humble enough to understand that you don't necessarily know what you're doing in every other sector, every silo of your life.
right, that's a really important thing. I think it's a skills equilibrium, right? If you're really good at a few things, there's some things you're probably not as great at. That's kind of like,
100%.
um, and maybe just to follow into this mindset a bit, financial stress is the number one, ahead of competition. Financial stress is usually the one that hurts these companies, startups. What's the money talk you give to founding teams to make sure that they're on the same page? I kind of use the analogy of you always want to be in the similar demographic, and when I say that, it means you're sometimes age-wise, risk-wise, financial-wise in the same buckets. Because I remember backing a team back in the day, and they were in different worlds. One was at the office Saturday, Sunday, one was putting winter tires on a BMW. Like, those
Yeah.
generally don't fit well together, but maybe kinda give your take there.
Well, I mean, I had a early mentor in my career who used the term extreme candor, right? So I think you need extreme candor and honesty in communication in understanding where everybody's at. So, um, it's not losing focus on what you're trying to build and not getting distracted. So I mean, I find when money starts to come in and you start raising money and things are starting to look like they're changing, is not to start thinking about the exit because that's not the point yet, right? Is really staying focused on what you're trying to accomplish. And to your point, I mean, when you started your first business to when you started your fifth business, your is very different. Like, one, I'm sure you were like eating KD out of the pot. And now that's not necessarily the reality. I mean, you're much more sophisticated in how you're approaching it. You're looking at it differently. But we're all in this journey. All founders are in this journey at a different level, right? And it's just really understanding what that's going to look like. And it's really not losing the focus, is usually what I say.
Yeah, no, it's true. I think you're I'll take your comment as a bit of a question. I think over time as you evolve and you adjust these things, it becomes like a mindset shift in that you may have what is experience, right? It's just more mistakes you can learn from.
100%.
More gray hairs that you can get from decisions and experiences. But it's you still require this one element, and I tell all founders this. You have to have the naivety to go at it,
Hmm.
because all logical parts of your brain and body are telling you this is not a thing to do, right? Like, you need a naive belief in what you're building is so great, it's life changing, it's going to make humanity a better place, and you will be tested early and often on your resolve on that one line. And if you can't continue to, you know, grit through it, persevere through it, have days where the answer is like, I don't know, and have days where you're like, seeing rainbows. Like, you have to be able to do that. And I think your point's well taken there.
That's the hardest part, right? Because you have to apply that to your core, but you don't want to be applying that mindset to the exit, to all of the funds that you've actually taken out. It's actually the opposite,
Yes.
right? You're now looking at saying from the lens that, you know what, I'm going to be very conservative with this. I'm not going in a I'm not going to be naive. I'm not going to, in this case, it goes from naivety to hubris, right? So you want to be very careful not to think that I'm going to apply the same mindset that did really well for me in my business. And I can go and invest in every startup as an investor. And all of a sudden, I'm going to hit 100x on every single one I'm doing because I know what I'm doing. And who needs to be conservative? Who needs to have a balanced portfolios? Who needs to be worrying about risk?
This has been a key trait. You achieve success once, as a statistical outlier, you think everything works that way, and you forget like bell curves of distribution, right? Um,
Yep.
and I think a lot of founders that exit, especially early on, and I would put my former self in this bucket. Is like, I can do it all. I got it. I can manage the whole thing. And you know, there's days where I was like, "You sure about that?" And it was kind of in those moments where I was like, there's things that I am not the best at, obviously. And as you get older, it becomes more clear what your superpowers are, and more importantly, what you're not good at. I think a bit of experience helps you define those things, and you get to that. your naive belief in an idea, flipping the coin to being like, there's a structure and an element of something that needs to happen. And whether it's me and my persona or working with somebody like yourself to do that, I think is super important.
And it's a shift. And even if you do it, I mean, as long as it's an awareness, right? So it's a cognitive shift that you make that's saying, right now in this space, I am my founder self, right? So you're doing the naivety part, you're going at it, and this is where you are. It's all a part of your brain, right? But the hard part is going from this side of the brain to that side of the brain, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So that's really where a lot of people need help to stay focused, because you don't want to start being conservative mindset in your founder mindset, right? Because that's going to mess things up, right? Then you're just not going to make it. Then you don't want to have your founder mindset in that more conservative space. So it's a person, it's having a person, or some people say, well, I can do it themselves. And you have to be really good and aware to do this. But you're right. It's just, they're almost at the opposite of each other, right?
Yeah, fair enough. Um, okay, so maybe we'll kind of walk through the journey of a founder here. So you have this naive belief, you go through the ups and downs, you question yourself, and you get to a moment where there's a piece of paper sitting in front of you, and a virtual piece of paper these days, right? An LOI. Um, what are the decisions that should have been made before that point? And what are some of the decisions at that point that are critical that you see on the other side that people either don't know, don't think about, or it just helps to reinforce here?
That's a really, really good question, because everything is hindsight, right? So if you're building and you're knowing that you're going towards the 9-figure exit, then I would say, yeah, get the lawyers in on day one and start planning right away, because we know where you're going. The reality is you don't. And focus is the most important thing, right? And then, do you want to be spending money on tax lawyers, like tax accountants, when really you should be putting your money back into your product and making sure you're going to get to where you're going? So I think whatever you do, do it with intentionality. Understand where you're at, and don't think, you're hanging out with your buddies, and some of them, all other ones have exited, and everybody has advice for you. Because remember, advice is cheap, right? Like, it really is. Everybody's got some.
Free.
Everybody's got some.
It's worth what
Um,
you pay for it.
and exactly. So, don't let don't let the tail wag the dog, as the old proverb says. So focus is everything. I think you're gonna have moments in time as you progress through your business where there's opportunities to do some planning, and then make sure you grab those, right? And I would tell you exactly what those moments are, but they're different for everybody. Um, and the reality is, don't let the idea, I mean, we all hate to pay taxes, and please, nobody on this call take this the wrong way, but we are going to pay tax, right? As painful as that sounds, there is going to be a layer of tax. So don't let the idea of someone come in and tell you, I can get you not to pay tax, because that's a pitch in itself, right? And then you're going to have enough advisors, enough people trying to sell you stuff along the way. We're going to try to get onto the bandwagon and hang your honors, like you talked about entourage before, right? Like, the idea of amount of hanger honors that are going to start accumulating is incredible. Um,
I think it's important to interject here. I will share
yeah,
this with the audience. I remember, we had our exit. We announced it in the morning. First exit I had announced in the morning. By lunch, there was a stack of business cards at the front desk.
100. Oh, yeah.
Stack. And it wasn't like a one-off. I was nearby. Stack. They read it. They all checked up the address on our website, showed up. This includes anybody who has any interest, and they didn't have malice intent. They were just on it.
No,
Every wealth advisor, every insurance agent, every bank, all on my desk. And I was just like, wow.
and they're
And
good. And
they're
they're
good.
very good at what they do.
The best advice I got was put those cards in a bin and look at them in 6 to 12 months.
I
That was
absolutely. That would I mean, we'll touch on this in a bit, but to me, that is the most important thing to do. Do not put the cart in front of the horse. Um, so I think that, you really need to stay focused. And then on the exit, that's a whole different kind of area, um, that you start looking at a different strategy, different plan. But right now, as you're building the business, don't, like, again, just in this conversation, right? Look how you can go off on a tangent to talk about all these other things. But the reality, the original question was, as money comes into the business, how do you stay focused? It's so hard, even in a conversation like this, because there's so many things you can talk about. But you're not going to get the exit if you don't stay focused.
yeah. So I think just to really get our head around it, it's like stay focused. You know, get get advice that makes sense for the scale of your business,
Yep.
and then there's kind of the I don't know if it's set it and forget it, but we'll go into that. There's a black fly analogy that I like that you have,
Uh-huh.
uh, and it's really about those tiny administrative tasks that eat your time as a founder. Like your most valuable time is your focus, and if you're spending time worrying about personal investments, insurance renewals, you know, pick your thing, like you're losing. So how do
100%.
we
I
how do we
mean,
think about that as founders go through this journey to understand like what should they be focused on, what should they worry about, and then what should they be like that's out of the scope for me.
so in your operating world, there's a system called the Entrepreneur's Operating System, right? So some of you might not know what it is, but it's this concept of a founder, they call it a visionary, needs to focus on what's in front of them. They're the juice, the rocket fuel, everything you want to call it. And everything that pulls them away from that is a detriment to the business. So they get something called an integrator, right? So that's their number two. It's a CFO, COO, somebody who sits behind him and takes all these great ideas, all that juice, turns it into strategy and then execution, right? Because that is the propelling. That is what propels the organization forward. Because you can't just go on rocket fuel, right? At some point, you need a more sustainable fuel. And the idea is that when you leave your enterprise, which is your company, and you go into your personal life after an exit, the reality is that still stays with you. It's still the same structure, the same discipline. And you're going to want to be doing all these cool things. And the analogy you're referring to, as I did on another podcast, was it's like being at the cottage, right? So you're at the cottage, it's a beautiful day. You're standing in this house, looking through the window, and you can see the lake. It's shimmering, it's beautiful, it's hot. And you're like, I'm going to hang out on that lake. That's what I'm going to do today. And then you leave the house, and as you're walking towards the beach, all these flies start showing up and they start pecking at you and pecking at you. And you're like, oh, this is annoying. This is annoying. And then you get to the beach, and all of a sudden you got this swarm of flies all over you, and you're so busy swatting all of them, you forget why you're there. You want to just go back in the house, and you're not enjoying what you really wanted to, you set out to do. That's kind of, and the idea of the black flies is all these administrative operational tasks that actually come at you, and you don't want to deal with them. So that's kind of where, having that same mindset, that same structure in your life after exit, right? As you're still the visionary, you want to focus on the things that are important to you. And to do that, you are starting to accumulate tasks and administrative tasks. They're coming at you that you could never have imagined. And traditional Joe or Jane don't really have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. You are actually a mini enterprise. You will have an accounting department for your own little life. You're going to have a finance department because you're like, why do I need that? Well, you're actually going to, as things get more complicated and you start accumulating things and you start doing different interesting activities, and you're being called to different board meetings because you exited and now you're a really interesting person to have. You know what I mean? And you want to look at different LPs and GPs, and everything's kind of coming at you from everywhere. You need somebody. Well, you don't need somebody, you don't need anything, but, like, it is helpful
No,
to
I think you're
have
right.
sometimes somebody who can actually make sense of all that noise for you.
Yes, I think what happens is there's such a pull on your time and your expertise that
Yeah.
you don't sometimes know how to process, like, I can be helpful here. I and it takes a bit of screwing up to get this right, to be like, "Hey, I'm not good in these situations," or "I'm really great in this situation." You push for those. I think it really helps to have some framing on that. Um, Couple things. So, I think about it out loud and I go, "Hey, I don't give personal advice because I'm not qualified to give it. Founders come to me all the time and they're like, I'm having this issue at work, da da da, and really it's all relationships on teams and stuff like that. And I can share some insights or ask questions to get insights. Then they flip to their personal side of the house and I go, are you putting in less, the same, or more effort in the personal side of your life? That's the only question I can qualify, I can
Yeah.
have a occasion to ask. And they start when they hear that question, they're like, most people, the answer is no, it's less, sadly. And it's like, and my only intention with that question is to get them to think about, like, what's the effort level? Are you intentional? Are you worrying about things on a Sunday night that aren't in your kind of scope? And if so, like, you gotta find help for them, right? Like, that's kind of the way I've just been thinking about it. You're an expert in this.
Yep.
Maybe talk people through how you think about that.
Well, I think the idea is, I mean, you almost have to back it up too. You go at it with intentionality, right? So it's kind of like, I'll pull it back to your startup days. When you started a business, you had a great idea. You started the business. You didn't necessarily need structure. You just needed pure willpower. You just go in and you're going at it and you don't necessarily know what you're doing and you're figuring it out. But as you start to pick up momentum, you start to implement structure and discipline, right? So what do we want to be? Everybody talks about what are the values of the business? How are we building out? What do we want to be when we grow up? Right. So you kind of develop that. And you almost have to do exactly the same thing. Because if not, you just wander. And you said earlier the best advice you got was after you did your first exit, put all those business cards in a box. And to add to that, and this is where you add this layer, as I always tell people, you need to find your purpose. And I don't care what it is. I don't care what that looks like, but you need to understand and be very clear, explicitly clear on what your purpose is over the next 5 to 10 years, because it evolves and it changes, right?
It's a journey, right? Like, you're you
It
you
is.
you went from, like, this world of sliver of life that was everything for you to that's now past your timeline, and you have this whole new scope. And I find this is where a lot of exited founders get lost. Like, there's a bunch
Yes.
of forums now, you know, there's some of them doing the IPO, they have this forum, that forum, long angle, like, there's all of these things,
Yes.
and people just get lost in trying to figure out what their purpose is next
Yes.
because they've had success. And I'm like, it should be the opposite. You've had success. Your purpose should be clearer to you.
But there was a phenomenon when you look through the industrial age, right? Where you would go to work in a company and you retire at 65 with a golden watch. And how many stories do we hear about people who actually died after they retired? And a lot of it is, yes, health, but a lot of it is this loss of purpose. Who am I? And then what we're seeing actually is we're seeing this starting to happen at people in their 30s and their 40s, because what's happening is they're exiting at 35, at 40. And then it's like, okay, now what?
Okay, let me give you the example that caught my eye. This was dated. I had to go look it up. It was maybe uh, federal finance minister, uh, Jim Flaherty,
Yep. Well, that's just a good one.
accomplished, amazing track record. Not a political view, just a view. I think he retired. It says in 14, and he literally died weeks later,
Mhm.
a heart attack.
Yeah.
That's like, I was like, I don't know the story. I'm not linked with the family. I don't know any of the details, but I was looking at that and I was looking at my parents' generation that lived this, you know, retire at a certain age. And I remember my parents retired early and their sense of purpose once the kids were out of the house, they had to redefine everything. It was very
Y
but when you're facing that decision in your 30s,
yes.
it's like, some
With
have
a bank account full of money.
yeah, and some have families, some don't. Some have a bucket list, some don't. Somebody
Yep.
else's bucket list can become your bucket. Like, it's just an incredible surface area to navigate, and people wanna navigate the whole thing. And without structure, it's overwhelming. It's really
And the
overwhelming.
thing is, if you don't do it, you become your exit. So instead of being Amar, husband, son, father, you are Amar the exit, 5-time X. Like basic, they impose this identity on you, right?
It's somebody else's scorecard. Yeah, absolutely.
100%. Instead of being, if you're clear about your purpose and who you are you your exit or is that just something you did? Right. And did you want to be known by, and there's nothing wrong with if that's what you want your identity to be, awesome. But at least you choose that. And you have to understand people put that on you because in the service world and the advising world, that quantifies your target, right? Are you a big fish? Are you a medium fish? Are you a small fish? Do I sell to you? What am I trying? Like,
There's every so often you meet a remarkable person, and this is a recency bias. I met somebody recently, you know, he be has a he founded a company, went public, now the exec chairman of a public company, which is kind of an aspirational role for most founders, right?
yeah.
Um, in the startup world, those don't work for anybody listening. Those are fake titles. But in the public world, it's very much a thing. And the amount of insight and the journey of purpose this person told me about, and walked me through in just a casual group dinner setting, I was blown away. I'm like, "This took work. This took thought. This took going through a journey. This took experience. This took mistakes. This," and ultimately what came out each time was, "I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this." And it
Hmm.
was backed with like why the experience, and I was like, "Wow." Like, that's somebody who found purpose, and is sharing that with people. Um, and it's insights, and if you can't resonate with them today, you should put them in your mental context window, your conscious system one memory, and bring them up at some point, to be like, what was that statement? Why? Right? And
Yeah.
when you can place events to it, it'll give you meaning. And it was mind blowing.
And that's always what I start. Like to me, the finance stuff, the money stuff is a tool. It's just right on exit. Who are you going to be to the world? That's my first step.
So let's get into
Then you can take the cards out of your, then you can start looking at what you're going to do. But who do you want to be?
who do you want to be. I think is the number one question that should be asked,
Yes.
and it can change over time.
That's why I said 10 years because it's going to evolve. Like every year it can evolve as your journey evolves, as you become more aware, as you have more experiences. We're
I
not the
mentioned
same people we were when we were like,
exactly. I mentioned this earlier. Like, people talk about their work like it's very planned, minute by minute, quarter by quarter, year by year,
yeah,
and they don't have that in their personal life. They don't take time to reflect. They don't take time to think about it. They don't have a tool or a group of persons to do that, and it's very interesting to see the difference, in opinions. Let's get into some of the specifics.
yeah.
So, like, a couple questions, right? At what point after an exit, or even when somebody's in a journey, they might be at a public company and their RSUs have just gotten so big. At what point should they get help on their finances? And is there like kind of in 2026, what does a family office look like? When does it make sense?
So you should get help, and I'll address the family office question in a second, but you should get help when those black flies become overwhelming. Because it's almost that thing I can tell you about it, but unless you experience it, it's hard to see the value. Um, and then when you determine, you come to the point where you determine your time is worth more than spending on a lot of these things going on, then that's when you need help. That's where someone like me comes in, right? So the idea is that everybody's going to come to you with with ideas. Everybody wants to give advice. Like we were talking, everybody gives you advice, but they give you their advice in their own little silos, and there's no cross execution. And that's really what those flies are, right? Because you could have an account says, okay, wait, tax time's coming. All right. Their job is not necessarily to talk to the lawyers, talk to the investment advisors. Investment advisors are not talking to the lawyers and accountants. And everybody's talking, so that leaves on to you to do. And if you're okay to do it, great. Some people are that's what they want to do. That's fine. But some people are like, I can't bear to do this. Like this is so much because now we're talking about I have clients who have 9 entities in different countries, and it's like, you gotta manage all this. You have to deal with you have to be able to understand when the filing requirements, what's going on in these different areas. It's all operational.
What and then kind of my trigger words there is if somebody brings up Cayman Blocker Corporation,
Yeah.
you're in a new world. It's like
There's just so many moving parts that you have to really be aware of, and do you want to? So, the idea of family office. I had a I had a client. He's a younger tech exit. I mean, I say younger now because I mean I'm considered on the older side now, but um, and he made this point. He says, family offices. First, he's like, I'm not married. I don't have kids. And then it just sounds so like oak and leather. So he said, why don't we just use a term like a private office? And then I thought that was a really good idea because the idea of a family office, unfortunately, has been appropriated by the wealth management industry who uses it to sell to people and say, you need one. And what is a family office? It's different for everybody. So why kind of say, oh, I need one of those? Well, do you? Like, I can say there's all sorts of different structures. I mean, if you're worth 10 figures, right? Then you can say, all right, you know what? Yeah, you probably can spend $2 or $3 million a year on your own family office and you want to do that, then that's fine. Go for it. And your complexity is probably there and there's enough work. But then you start looking at people who say, well, we do a multifamily office, but you got to buy these investments from us, or you got to buy this insurance from us. And then the reality is they're just trying to sell you something. They're just a better packaged mousetrap. That's all they are. To me, a private office is really about operation and execution, right? In whatever way, shape, or form you want it to be, and it cannot be conflicted. So they can't derive compensation from anything else but what you pay them. And they have no loyalties to anybody but you in this case, right? And if you say, I want to buy a fleet of vintage Ferraris, that's going to be my investment, then we're buying a fleet of vintage Ferraris. Like, I'll get the best deal on them. Like your job is not to say, well, I don't have a product that doesn't put package vintage cars and like it doesn't have to be a product on their shelf. It's whatever you want it to be.
that's awesome. How do
And I
people
apologize to the financial services world. I have got a lot of respect for a lot of people out there.
yeah,
Um, but
no
it is what
apologies
it
to you.
is.
Like the game's evolving and moving. Um, how do people find you and what is kind of the the category of person? I'll qualify it with generally, if I understand it correct, it's somebody in a high class problem, either in something or post something, but maybe open floor to you and then yeah.
Um, anybody who related to the black flies will see what I'm talking about. Um, it's going to be people who want to focus on different things than the operation execution of their day to day. That's really what it comes down to. And it's not a net worth number; it's a value number. I mean, it's the idea of they want to explore having that number too. People who understand EOS, right, the Entrepreneur's Operating System, understand what an integrator does for them. This is a really good path because they understand the whole process. So it's all kind of mapped out exactly the same way. Um, and how to find me, probably the easiest is on LinkedIn. I mean, you can find me there. That's
We'll
probably a
post
really
it.
easy way.
Link. We'll post a link to it. And
Yeah.
I'm not trying to market or sell anything here.
No, no.
Will sell the concept of, if you want to go achieve a lot of life's things, and you're in that bucket, having somebody working with you enables them faster.
Yes.
I've had enough time, in life to understand that if you have a bucket list of things, you could do them on your own, or you can get help by focusing on them and letting somebody else do the swatting of some of the important stuff that goes through it. Um,
Absolutely.
that's very cool, and we've gotten to know each other a bit on this, and I really appreciate your stance, your focus, your where the compensation and stuff should be derived from, topics, all that stuff. Especially given some of the previous experience of your global firms before, that probably may not have been the case. Not saying they're better or worse, just it as a person putting time and money into these systems, it's like, do I want to buy the brokerage asset, or I want to buy the raw asset? Like, there's just all these questions that show up over and over. So
Absolutely.
I get it. Couple things as we kind of get into some of the rapid fire part that we do here.
Okay.
Um, what's the for anybody listening who's in the process of an LOI, or thinking of an exit, or in the process of an exit, what's the one question they should ask themselves, strictly from a financial perspective, that might be helpful for them to hear in this moment?
From an exit or building?
Yeah, stuck to the exit, because I think a lot of people come to me when they've got this LOI in their hand. They're like, "Hey, how should I structure things?"
Mm,
Can't turn back the time sometimes.
yeah. I mean, I think if the purpose is exit, then back to what we were talking about, then are they really clear on who they are? Because I think money is the tool. Just never ever forget money is the tool. It is not the end goal.
It's enabler. Yeah.
It's an enabler. That's all it is. As appealing of enabler it is, trust me, it's really nice, but it's still an enabler.
All right, some quick follow-ups here. Your beloved Canucks are in the basement along with
Mm,
the Leafs, so let's talk Colorado, uh,
okay, so
Lightning,
okay, you want
Canucks.
so I'll tell you this. So if I lifted my head up right now, I'm not a Canucks guy, but if I lift my head up right now, there's a signed jersey of Matt Sundin rookie year with the Quebec Nordiques. So I grew up in Montreal. I'm an original Quebec Nordiques fan. So then when you talk Colorado, that kind of appeals a little bit more. Um,
Name
but
the
I am a
3.
big football guy. There's Peter, Marion, and Anton.
You're a fan, and who is the centerman?
Um, but I'm a Seahawks guy, so I'm a football guy.
Nice, good year for you.
It was a very good year for me.
Yeah, it's nice. Well, congrats. I was also too. I grew up in Ottawa. I grew up, and I learned French watching hockey and
Uh-huh.
baseball, the Expos and
Oh,
Nordique.
big Expos fan.
So the Nordique were on one night a week.
Yeah.
I knew the Stastny brothers, Goulet, the goalie who played in the '84 Olympics was in there. And then when they moved and Patrick Waugh showed up, I was like, this was fixed.
What was it? The Easter Monday was it the
uh,
the massacre when the Hunter brothers went after each other?
your brothers, yeah, that was.
But yeah, so that's like now we're gonna be like losing a lot of people on this, but
Yeah, really. Okay, next
that
question.
yeah.
Advice you would tell your kids you wish you knew at their age.
Um, don't be afraid to make mistakes, and if you're gonna pay the tuition, you better get the lesson.
Oh, that's a good one. Mark that one down. I think there's a culture of gotta be perfect. Uh,
Yes,
and I think mistakes within limits and bounds, and sometimes not, are the best lessons you're gonna get, especially early. Book every founder should have on their nightstand.
anything from Jim Collins.
Sorry, say it again.
Jim Collins. Anything from Jim Collins.
Got it. It's a good one.
Yep.
And then everybody's got kind of a litmus test of like people they want to hang out with. Sometimes it's interests. I like yours. Maybe share it here, and hopefully we can do this next time you're in town.
Who I'd like to hang out with?
What's your litmus test?
Oh, for me, I mean, you have to pass the beer test. If I can't have a beer with you, then it's gonna be really, really hard. I mean, and, unless you don't drink beer, but, I mean, there's always unalcoholic beer, but the idea is that I'm all about authenticity, so I need to have authentic conversations and people being who they are, so
Yeah, I think it's lost on people, right? This litmus test. They get a recommendation from a friend, and the friend loves it. It's like, but it's not for you, and they sometimes don't have a scorecard to be like, it's not for me, and they feel it, but they can't give you the line item with the checkbox as to why. And I
yeah.
think there's a lot of struggle in there. That's a
I
really
want
good.
the same person in the boardroom who's gonna be out having a beer. Like, I wanna know who people are, and without pretension, we're all just human beings making in this world, so,
I think the candor, the radical candor is really the key there. It's like,
yeah.
be authentic, be yourself. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. And those are all great insights. Well, Chris, this has been a great chat.
Yeah, it was
Appreciate
great.
your time and vision. There's a lot to dig into here, and hopefully we can have a further on follow on chat soon.
Yes, and a beer when I'm in Toronto.
Cheers.
Take it easy.